Hello, welcome to the Tolkien Collector's Guide YouTube channel, where we gather experts from around the world to discuss Tolkien's books and the people who read them. I'm Urulókë, and with me are Trotter and Mr. Underhill. I want to give a big welcome to Robert Foster. It's great to have you here. It's lovely to see your face. We've been missing you for decades, and it's lovely to have you here with us. So my first question, just to kind of kick us off, is if you just want to give us a little bit of background. I'm sure some of our audience members here didn't see you when you were on with us in March, and so just walk us through a little bit of why you decided to make this book way back in the day.
I don't remember why. The only this is like 3/4 of my life ago.
Finally.
Oh,
hey,
this
Ted.
is great.
Good to see you.
Hey, Ted. Very serious apologies for the technical difficulties. We will hit the reset button. We were just 2 minutes in. We decided to get started while I continue to try and give you technical assistance, but we'll rewind the tape. My humble apologies for the technical challenges, but we're glad to have you here, and you look great. We've got Bob Foster here as well. You guys have not met before, I believe. So Bob, this is Ted, and Ted, this is Bob.
No, we have not met before. Hi.
Hello. Yeah.
So,
good to meet you, sir.
The reason we're gathering today is that HarperCollins in the UK, the parent company, is publishing a new edition of Robert Foster's The Complete Guide to Middle-earth. Next week, September 1st, is the official release date for the trade edition. You can see Trotter's holding it up to his camera here.
Yes.
We'll have better pictures for you guys somewhere along the line, but it's fully illustrated by Ted. This is the second edition, I believe, that Ted, you have illustrated. There was one in 2003, and then this one has some different and updated illustrations. But we're all looking forward to the book. We're very happy that you two are able to join us. I thought we would kick it off. Robert, I'm going to ask you the same question again a little bit, which is just give us a little bit of your background on this book and some of your history on why you made it way back in the Mirage days of the 1970s.
Well, again, as I said, I don't quite remember, but I know that I just found Lord of the Rings by accident in my local public library and liked it a lot. I told my friend Dick Plotz about it, and he liked it and decided to organize a Tolkien Society.
That's way back. My goodness, Plotz. I've heard that name a
Yes.
few times.
No, I discovered Tolkien in it's either 1964 or 1965. And so after I met Ed Meshkis, he had a fanzine called Niekas. And someone had been doing a glossary of Tolkien stuff for him, and he disappeared. A combination of Ed Meshkis needing somebody, and either I or Dick recalling that my grandfather was, his life in many ways was built around making records of written things, suggested I should do this. So I just started at A and went from there.
That's awesome. And you were doing this with index cards, if I remember correctly.
Yes. In 1965, that was the state of the art.
And good. And Ted, since we're just getting you introduced here, why don't you give us a tiny bit of background, specifically around the Complete Guide to Middle-earth. So your introduction to that book back, almost 20 years ago, I'm guessing, and deciding to illustrate or being invited to illustrate it, and what that process was a little bit.
Right. Well, of course, I've owned a copy for a long time, and it's, of course, extremely useful for many reasons. Um, the story of why I came to illustrate it revolves around attempts to get an art book launched a few years ago, well, probably about 15, 20 years ago. And it was not going to happen, it looked like. But the idea of illustrating Foster's book was, I guess, in the planning stages, there a possibility that, it just came together that why don't we issue an illustrated edition. I think it was 50 illustrations in color originally, and it was only available in the UK. But that was very important to me because I was also invited to write a little essay at the back of the book on my feelings around Balrogs and wings and this sort of stuff too. So that was nice to a little way of kind of putting my own personal stamp in there. But it was something of a substitute for an art book, which we too know a little bit about, don't we, Jeremy?
Ted, your essay's in the new copy as well. It's still there. Yeah.
Ah, lovely. That's good to know. Thanks,
so,
Andrew.
Ted, you said something that you were kind of already familiar with the book. I'm wondering if you've used it sort of as a reference for your art back as, finding references or anything like that. If it's a book that you kind of go back to.
I would have done so, yes. I can't remember specific occasions really, but of course it's an important resource, and it saves chasing up stuff in the various different indexes in Tolkien's books as well. Really much better to have it all collected like that in alphabetical order.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Absolutely. So Bob, back to you, a quick question, which is, how did this newest edition come out? If you want to go through a little bit of the more recent history of, you told me yesterday, I think, that you thought the book was out of print and had been for decades. And then, so in the last year or so, we've gotten back in touch. You've gotten back in touch with the publishers. I'm wondering if you're able to talk about that history a little bit.
Well, yeah, the unfortunate part about this is my original publisher was Jack Chalker, and so the very first guide to Middle-earth was published by his Mirage Press in 1971. By 1975, it had Ballantine Books at that time had picked it up. And things went on merrily until the year into 2004, when Jack Chalker died. His widow stopped sending me royalties. This was after the movies, and so I figured that it just had gone the way of all books. And after a while, I just kind of forgot about it.
As one does.
Yes.
You move on with other projects.
Right.
We all thought you'd disappeared off the face of the earth too.
Yeah, the publisher seemed to think that, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really. Where's Foster? Where's Robert Foster?
I know. Yeah, I remember Ted talking with you probably a year or two ago on your illustrated complete guide. We were talking about your wanting to do an art book and everything, and neither one of us had any way to get in touch with you, Bob. We were just sort of, hopeful that you were fine and out in the world somewhere, but HarperCollins didn't know how to reach you. Random House, Ballantine, Del Rey didn't know how to reach you. It just, the communications had broken down, I think, when Jack passed away.
Yes.
Right.
Although the royalties were still going to his widow, and my address had not changed since literally the year 2001.
So she knew how to get a hold of you.
No, she stopped sending me my percentage of the royalties.
Oops.
Hopefully it's all solved now. It's clear that HarperCollins, since we're talking about their edition today, they're back in touch with you. It sounds like you were able to make some small corrections or updates in this particular edition, the edition that's coming out next week. You want to tell us a little bit about any of that? It may not be very exciting, but I'm certainly curious to know what changes you may have made in the text.
I haven't made any changes yet. I did get to proofread the British edition.
Yep.
And now I'm starting to work seriously on getting everything caught up. I do what we want to do for what goes forward is to include some of the material from from Unfinished Tales.
That's interesting.
That'll be
so the
very
work on
interesting to see.
Yeah, so the work on the guide is it hasn't stopped. It's still going.
Well, it's restarted. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's restarted.
Yes.
After a break.
We have to re-earn the complete.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. The now incomplete guide to Middle Earth.
I have a question for Ted.
Yeah.
Ted, how did you way back when y'all did the first illustrated guide, how did you go about selecting the pictures, and has your process changed at all with selecting the pictures for this new edition?
That was all done with Chris over at HarperCollins. They picked all the artwork and just, decided which ones would go in. With this new edition, there was a lot of discussion about putting in newer versions of some of the works. So I guess if you compared both of those books, the different editions, you would see that things have been updated and changed, and we added new pieces as well. That was a good thing to do. So that's the main difference, is that we just took a look at everything, and I decided which ones we could maybe improve on, add to, or remove and switch out, sort of thing. So that's been done, and I was very glad to have that opportunity.
So y'all made some changes to the artwork that was already in there. Okay. Yeah.
So I was participating in that discussion.
Yeah, I've actually done a spreadsheet that shows all the differences between the two books, so you can actually see in the spreadsheet what illustrations have changed, what new edition.
How many images are in the new edition, Andrew?
Well, there was 50 in the 2003, and there's 54 in this new edition, but they're not the same. So some of them have changed. So it's not quite the same as saying that there's 4 new ones.
Right.
It's one of the things that I quite like about the book.
Yeah.
Is that the original one, because Ted had just done a lot probably of Lord of the Rings, it's very Lord of the Rings centric, whereas this one has more Silmarillion and Hobbits, because you've done more illustrations, I think, since then of those areas. It's quite nice to have a bit more variety of pictures in the new edition.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and the only thing that we need to look out for is just inconsistencies. He was working on a lot of things. He was changing things. I was just reading, Unfinished Tales. With the long piece in there about Galadriel and Celeborn. There's 3 continuous pages talking about inconsistencies in Tolkien's own thoughts of where they spent much of their time.
Yeah, absolutely. Ted, speaking of inconsistencies, I recall you have a Gondolin piece that you painted that was in summertime, and then you redid it based on a little mention of snow in one of Tolkien's works. I know you've kind of evolved your artwork over time as well, as you've done deeper readings or discovered small snippets.
Yep. And that is one of the great things about just doing the work of the images that I mostly want to do myself. And when Unfinished Tales came up as now a serious prospect to be illustrated, the rereading of it, revealed that one line which mentions snow, and of course you kind of like, oh, right, the whole story takes place in winter. And for some reason, because the Silmarillion's shorter account doesn't mention the snow, I just went with, and it does actually mention green fields as well. And so, and a lot of people love that piece of art. I put a ton of time into it. So it is what it is for the impression that it gives in the Silmarillion. But yeah, you realize, oh yeah, this is not consistent at all with the storyline, and that wanted redoing. And of course, it's a magical scene when you see the whole thing in snow. So that was just like, wow, they're wonderful situations, I find. And I wanted to say too that because the new edition has new artwork, then those who collected the old one, aren't faced with just shelling out for another book just because it's been re-illustrated a bit more, but at least issued with a few new pieces of art that makes it a little less, kind of difficult for people's budgets.
Yeah, no. Were you given a good amount of time to come up with new pieces, or was it things from your portfolio that you pulled in?
Forrest Foster's, all of those files were there already. I just went with the files that we had.
And that new version of Gondolin is in the new guide, is it not? Yeah. So if you don't have it, you can get it in the new guide, I believe.
I'm just checking.
No, Andrew's checking for us. I'm pretty sure it's in there, but
yeah, I've forgotten to.
Bob, I have a question for you about assembling the guide all those years ago. I know you alluded to talking about, you had the index cards and you started at A. It seems like a really gargantuan task to do it without the use of like a home computer. So could you talk a little bit about just how you did that? Like how you arranged the index cards, how you kept everything straight from what you can recall?
No, actually, I think I probably just assumed that this was the natural way to do things, in part because my grandfather had tens of thousands of pages of paper slips like that. And so all the advantage of index cards is that they're easier to shuffle. Mm-hmm. All you need to do is say, okay, this is the name that I'm going to use for this entry. And that then any description goes on that index card. If there are alternate names, I just have to remember to write the name of the alternate name on that index card.
Okay.
The bane of my existence is page numbers. Because every time a new edition came out, all the paging changed.
Oh yeah, so the pagination was definitely hard to keep up with. I bet. Yeah, it's hard for me to keep up with.
Yes, the new UK version seems to have, and I haven't seen it yet. I'm getting a copy in the next week or two. To have found a way to do pagination automatically.
The page numbers are different, obviously, in the new edition because it has been reset.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
but obviously the index is still referring to the same page numbers in the books that you originally referred to. And I think people can still find them. I think the way you've set it out is actually quite good, and it's actually relatively easy to find those entries in the books.
Yeah, I've always found your guide very easy to use.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Yeah, the index at the back of the, probably going back at least 10 years or so, the new system they have where the page numbers refer to multiple editions. So like for a reference in the Lord of the Rings, the index at the back has, I want to say 5 or 6 different editions. So you can find the page number in the 50th anniversary edition or in the paperbacks, etc. So the work is being done. I don't think, Bob, you've been involved because a lot of those editions came out after you were, done with your initial edition of the book. But it's really an excellent resource for finding things.
Yes, it is. It's very good. The original versions, I think, just point out here. Originally, the text actually had the references in with the text, but after 2003, it looks like to me, and the latest one, they're in an index at the back, which I think makes it a bit easier because you can read the text, and then if you're interested in finding where they are in the books, you look in the back. But it does actually make it a bit more easier to read the text as actually like a book because it's all together, and you want the footnotes; they're effectively in the back. So they're all still there. Yeah.
I think that's a difference between the American and the British editions. I think the American, the Ballantine Del Rey editions still have the page references at the bottom of each entry. So it kind of looks like a little secret code of shorthand letters and numbers, potentially for like 5 or 6 lines of text to describe all the various places that you can find references. And that's moved to the back in the British editions.
Ted, I have a question for you. So I know you talked about how you went with Chris, and y'all kind of determined what was going to be improved, what was going to be added, and things like that. Is there anything that you wanted in the new edition that didn't make it in, or is there anything that you wish would have gotten in there that didn't make it in?
I was pretty happy with what we came up with at the end of the day. Yes. Short answer.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I do think it's a nice variety in there now. So, and also it's a nice portfolio for your art, Ted, as well. You're covering a huge range in here of different things.
Indeed.
Yeah. So it's a nice, if someone wants to have a look at Ted's artwork, this is a great book to look at all the different things that you've for Middle Earth that you've covered. Really, it covers pretty much everything.
They definitely got the slipcase correct on the deluxe. With that, the piece that they chose for the slipcase is fantastic. It looks fantastic. The mock-ups do anyway.
Yeah, that was nice to see that too. That the Mirkwood piece is one of my favorites for Hobbit painting. Came from a very, very small little, 3-inch, less than 3-inch thumbnail, which just kind of captured the basics of the composition, and it kind of painted itself. It was very, very satisfying to do.
Yes, I think the light's very good in that. The way you caught the light, because you have made it look nice outside and absolutely horrible as soon as they get inside. I think you caught that very well. In that picture.
And you see little bits of things like spider webs, just hinting at.
Yeah. Oh yes.
Yeah, well, that's the way it's supposed to be, Andrew.
Oh no, it is. No, it's a very good representation. It just shows how horrible it is.
I've had some lovely feedback from people as well about the number of illustrations and how they really appreciate having that available to them with the many requests I've had for an art book, over the years. So, and I am working on that now seriously as well as best I can with Jeremy's help.
I'm very excited. We're making good progress on it. Hopefully, in the near future, we can get some good traction with HarperCollins. Convince them to put this out as a big coffee table book.
Yeah, there's no reason that they shouldn't put that out.
Right.
Like there's a big market for that. It would sell very well.
I would hope so. It's difficult with these things because you need a lower priced edition, softback, that kind of thing for some people with limited budgets, and I understand. At the same time, it would be great to have a very good, comprehensive, beginning to end, A to Z, my career, different genres I've worked in, and there's a ton of stuff there. But I'm going to have to get myself a large-scale scanner in order to deal with slides and things that go back, to the 70s in some cases. So that's the next thing, is just to pick that up and start feeding Jeremy the actual JPEGs and TIFFs and things. We can start doing the actual layout.
You could produce a Tolkien art book, and then it could be like a combo with all of your car work too, all of your automobile work. You could do like a combination.
Well, that's what we have in mind, actually. I'll definitely be providing for that possibility. All the different sort of genres I've worked in, including the automotive. We're setting up an exhibition right now for Urulókë, Italy, up in a few weeks now. Yeah, and that will be examples of all sorts of stuff I've done, including George R. R. Martin. There's a lot of that artwork here at my studio, just, fairly underappreciated, I think.
Yeah, well, I think I think really a book that covers the gamut of what you've done really would be, because I always say this one is good if someone wants to look at your Middle-earth stuff. This is excellent for that, but it doesn't show any of the other illustrations that you've done.
Right, exactly. At this stage, I wouldn't mind having volume 1 and to 5 different artworks. Yeah. But anyway, art of the possible and all that,
Yeah. So, Bob, this might be a difficult question, but if you were writing this today, obviously, you do it with a computer. Do you think it would have been easier to do it with a computer, or do you think that the having index cards and things made it an easier way for you to actually sort of create the guide?
No, it definitely would have been easier with a computer. There's no question about that. And it also, that would have also enabled solving the difficulty of the reference page numbers every time there's a new edition of Lord of the Rings.
Yes, I always think, to a certain degree, I'm glad that Tolkien didn't have a computer when he wrote the book, because he'd have been changing people's names forever. We just find and replace in there. And he'd have spent probably about 10 years changing everyone's name about thousands of times.
Well, he was, yes.
So,
yes. Yeah, no, he was constantly changing things.
He changed even more for computers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with y'all. He may not have ever produced anything like publishable. He may have just been caught up in all the different changes he could have made. Yeah.
Right.
Yes, it came close enough to that as it is, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Probably like 80% or more of what he wrote was really just notes and scribbles and versions and texts and everything else. Just the development of what we did finally get published. And it took a lot to get that published as well.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for Christopher Tolkien. Goodness.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely. Yeah. Chad in our chat, the other Chad, is mentioned that History of Middle-earth would not have existed if Tolkien had a text editor on a computer. He'd just be overwriting himself rather than saving all of his drafts.
There's a thought. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We can't have that.
So obviously, we're also thinking about, say, something like the History of Middle-earth. I can't really see how you could incorporate that into the guide. I just think that sounds to me like a step too far, really. Unfinished Tales, I think I can understand, but what would you think about the History of Middle-earth and trying to get that into your guide?
I think that going any further than Unfinished Tales would probably not the right thing to do.
Yeah, I can see how that might be a little confusing with all the different versions and things like that. I don't know. It might be a little bit more difficult to look things up, or easily confused, I guess.
Well, no, it's just that the later posthumous publications were things that were clearly not finished, and no one had made any effort to, Christopher Tolkien not made any effort to make them consistent with the primary books, because they were different, and because his father would have been continually changing things.
Bob, have you read The Children of Húrin specifically? That's the one that Christopher, I think, tried to get as close as possible to a finished state.
I've read it. I can go back and look at that. I haven't read it recently. I can go back and see if that seems to be consistent enough with all of the other published works that it's worthwhile adding.
I think something like the children. Yeah, I think something like the Children of Horn would be. That's a great idea, Jeremy. That would be an easily addable, sort of update to the guide, because it does read like a finished novel. So that would be something great to add to the guide, I think.
Yeah. Well,
not trying to give you more work to do, but
no. My concern is yes, it may read like a finished story, but it may be inconsistent with earlier published works.
Yeah, I think that's very fair.
I'm at what, to put it more bluntly, what hit me this morning as I'm like halfway through Unfinished Tales, and I was just blasting along. Everything seemed consistent. There's a lot of interesting information that I'd be very glad to add to my book. And then I hit History of Galadriel and Celeborn, which has a lengthy explanation of why it's inconsistent with everything else.
Yeah. So Ted, is there more Middle Earth art you think that isn't in this complete guide that you're either working on or interested in letting our listeners know about?
Well, I guess there are certainly, well, there's always new work coming up. I'm working on stuff right now. As of last December, when I guess we had to have all the artwork assembled, there may have been some things that I had done by then but hadn't been included in the book for whatever reason. So yeah, there's definitely new works coming along and things that would definitely be useful in there, I'm sure. They had to decide spacing out of the art a reasonable amount as well, so that we didn't have things, you might have several citations on the same page, which you could have a picture for each one, but it has to be managed so that there's a reasonable balance of that stuff.
Yeah, I think when I look at this book, I think you could do an illustration for every entry, really, in the book. That would be an enormous book if you did that, and an awful long time doing illustrations. But technically, you could.
It'd take up a whole shelf.
Yeah, it'd be huge.
Maybe we should. Yeah. There's a fair amount of sketches out there. I could definitely supply something, probably.
Bob, one of the things that that I'm always is there anything that you think is really missing from the guide? I know you said it's a complete guide, but is there anything that really that you think is missing?
Missing from which?
The guide, yeah, from the guide in general. Is there anything in there that you?
I don't think so. I think that I did. Let me back up. I don't know, actually.
Well, that's fair enough, because I think if you did know about it, you could have added it in, couldn't you?
No, and from what I can see now, I'm going to add some material from Unfinished Tales. I'm finding that the first half of Unfinished Tales is more consistent with previously published books than the second half of Unfinished Tales. The next question, I suppose, and it's the first part of this decision is out of my hands, is if there's the TV show. If there's...
Oh, yeah.
If there's new and unique information or events in there that are not contradictory with anything else, then there's every reason to treat that as standard content.
I'm very interested to see Brian Sibley's edited volume, The Fall of Numenor, which is coming out in November. It's editorial combination of all of the Second Age material that Tolkien has previously published. So it's pulling from the appendices of Lord of the Rings and from Unfinished Tales and Silmarillion. It's just combining all of the Second Age material. I think that would, getting page references in there after that book comes out into a future edition of the complete guide would be incredibly useful.
Yes.
Just trying to give you more work, Bob.
Right.
No. That I think that kind of work becomes easier. With the increase in electronic publishing, the page references should be automated, and if any book any new book has factual inconsistencies with earlier books, then I'm not sure that whether it should be treated as just a new work or as something that's in addition to the canon.
Well, I think it's worth worth pointing out. I mentioned this earlier before we started, but obviously anyone who is looking at the TV series and they want to know who the characters are in the TV series, then there's an excellent new book that's coming out next week, which I think is exactly what you should go out and buy, which is The Complete Guide to Middle-earth, because that's going to tell you who these characters are. And
right,
is it? I think it's very deliberate timing by HarperCollins to bring it out now, and it's very good. I'm hoping that people will watch the TV series, think I don't know who this character is, and buy the book. It's good to tell them who the characters are.
Yes, and as long as you can tell from watching a television show how those names are spelled.
Yeah,
that's why you need the guide in front of you.
Yes, the guide. I wouldn't be surprised if the show crew had this book as well as other references to hand when they were working. Their language consultant, Leif McPherson, was very good at pronunciation. So I'm hopeful that they get things mostly right in the show, at least as far as name pronunciation. Whether they follow, if the character you're seeing on screen matches what's described in the complete guide, I think they will deviate from there. But the pronunciation at least should be awesome. And then yes, figuring out how to spell that so you can find it in the guide might take a little bit of question, digging.
And the real dilemma is if at some point, if the television show goes on for years, the impulse to add new scenery, new events, new characters, etc., is going to be very hard to prevent. And I would welcome seeing that. I'm not sure whether I should add it to my book.
I would be against adding that to the book. I think having a complete guide to the Rings of Power as a separate book that describes the internal consistency of the TV show would be, an excellent endeavor. But I think cross-pollinating the changes and the choices the show made with the book, I would personally lean towards keeping those separate.
Yeah, that would probably be quite a big book by itself. If you take something like Game of Thrones and look at all the characters in there and try to make a complete guide to all the characters, that would be quite a huge book just by itself. And I think Rings of Power is really very similar. Yeah,
I do think there would be a market for that, though, like a complete guide to the Rings of Power. I think that would definitely sell very well too.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah.
There will be such a thing, I think.
I will only cross my fingers. Awesome. I'm going to take a quick call in here from Chad. Let's see if we can get you connected. Hey, Chad, welcome.
What's up? I just always wanted to tell Bob, it's good to see you online multiple times after years and years of admiring your work. And I would be all for having a separate Rings of Power book come out with Ted and Bob doing that, like you said. But I agree. I believe it'd be wise to put it in the book version of it. That's since y'all just said that. But I just wanted to give you my appreciation for your work. These other hoodlums know who I am already, but I've never talked to you before.
Well, thank you. I mean, for me, it's fun.
Thanks, Chad.
Bob, I have something that just occurred to me. Do you have I know there's been a lot of different editions of the guide that's been published over the years, like both in paperback, hardback, things like that. Do you have is there a favorite sort of like one with like cover art or format that kind of jumps out to you? Like one that you've owned over the years that was your favorite to have or to use? Or
No, I think I just enjoy the evolution. I think the art that I've seen in the last several months is in most cases just better than what was going on in the past. So
the newest is always the best.
Do you, Bob, have a copy of? Do you have a copy of Ted's illustrated edition, the prior one that came out in the UK 15, 18 years ago?
No, I don't.
We'll have to address that. Anyway, you're about to get the latest one, but I think seeing the other illustrations, Ted, you made in the prior edition would be awesome for Bob as well. So I'm going to make a mental note to fix that, because they're long out of print now, but I'm sure we can scrounge up a copy for you to have.
They the price went up a lot for those because they weren't in print for very long, but of course it will be collapsing again a bit now because there's a new version out. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to find you a copy.
Yeah, Bob, I think you would be, Bob, you'd be shocked at some of the prices for that edition on the secondhand market that over the last few years. Yeah, very, very expensive.
Mm.
But yeah, as Andrew said, now that there's a new edition that's coming out, those will come down a little bit.
I think it's a mark of how desirable this book is, both the content and then Ted's art as well. That it's always been in print, although you may not have known that, Bob. And you know, it's always been in high demand. It is.
Well, that's good to know.
I don't know how involved. Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you've seen this before, but Christopher Tolkien even mentions your complete guide as an indispensable reference for him when he was working on History of Middle-earth.
Yes, that's in the introduction to Unfinished Tales.
Yep, excellent. If there are any other questions from the audience, I think we have time for them. Trotter, Mr. Underhill, if you have any last little questions from you as well, let's. I think we're doing pretty good here.
I'm going to go for one for Bob. This is the complete guide to Middle Earth. Obviously, if you're going to add Unfinished Tales, what's that one going to be called then?
I've been thinking about that.
Even more complete.
My editor has not raised the subject yet, and she has some time to realize that a new title might be appropriate.
You should never call a book the complete anything, really, because it never is eventually.
That's publishing 101 right there.
Yeah.
Well, the very first editions were called just the Guide to Middle Earth, a Guide to Middle Earth. And in retrospect, yes, complete was perhaps not the right word back in back 50 years ago.
It was it seemed complete right after the Silmarillion was published.
Yeah.
You know, that was the impetus for that one, but then it was incomplete as soon as Unfinished Tales came out.
Did we know when the complete was added? I'm struggling to remember when complete was added to the title. I don't.
George Allen Unwin added it when it was done, and that was in 87 or something like that.
That sounds
right. It was in there, and it had the complete guide. So I don't know if that was when it got the name, and it was a guide before that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, complete was
been a complete guide for a long time.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think that was my choice, but it needed a new title because of the addition of the Silmarillion. Everyone thought that the Silmarillion was kind of the end of the road.
Agreed. So Ted, Shaylee asks in the chat window to me, the question is, if you have any thoughts or if this is an accurate representation, they wanted to know if you worked with Christopher and what that was like, if you did.
Yes. So going back to the Silmarillion back in the late 90s, he and I were able to work directly with each other. He would send written faxes, and there were generally, open communication for that reason. It was a good working relationship, very respectful on both sides. I really appreciated his professionalism, and we just talked very intelligently about each work of art, whether there was maybe any question about whether it was one illustration or another for the, I think, 16 slots that we had in 1998 for the first edition that was published. I think it would have 20 or 25 illustrations that first time out, and it had to do with the bindings, and that included cover art, I guess. But anyway, working with him was just a real joy for me, absolutely. And I still have all the correspondence collected for posterity as well. But he was very, very good to work with, and it was a tremendous experience for me, definitely.
Did Christopher ever request specific scenes from you to be illustrated?
There was I don't think so, but he was reacting to the series of thumbnails that I'd sent in to HarperCollins at the time. He was shown that stuff. There was a lot of it, and through that process, we did, winnow it down to what was possible to include in the book. And because the illustrations were tipped into the binding points, I think it's every 16 pages or something. That's where I'm getting 16 from. We had to have an illustration that was referred to either before or after that point within 2 or 3 pages, I would think. So that narrowed it down. He didn't want monsters. He didn't want things looking too kind of pop culture-y, which I understood as well. So that narrowed down the choices for paintings as well. So I always looked at the positive side of the situation where any restrictions or questions of content were involved in the situation. He had particular things, but he didn't tell me, I'd like to see this or that illustration. He would just interpret what I had done and give his ideas or, some input perhaps. But even there, it was he left it to me largely once a particular picture was decided. The one that stands out for me was at Lake Kuiviainen. The original little thumbnail showed nude figures, very sort of Greek kind of, tradition, I suppose, Arcadia, that sort of idea. And we had, we had them clothed for the illustration, but he wasn't sure it was even a possible illustration to use because it was so kind of ethereal and spiritual and mystical. But I did suggest that in a lot of religious iconography and art, completely spiritual ideas and mystical ideas are represented in realism in the greatest of artworks. And that argument persuaded him. The only other painting that we could have put there was, I think, Tumno or something, a very dark image. There were no sun and moon at all at that point. And I was trying to give the book more of a fairy content than, the impression one got from the terribly tragic history of the ring of the jewels. So these were the things that I was thinking about when I was putting together artwork. And thankfully, he was very, very understanding and positive about that idea too. So yeah, it was an excellent working relationship, I felt.
Excellent. I want to give Chad Bornhill credit for that question. He put it in the text chat, so I kind of spoke for him in asking that. And thank you for the very lengthy and wonderful answer there, Ted. That was great. I don't see any other questions coming in. Andrew, Chad, you guys have anything you wanted to ask?
No, y'all answered all my questions that I had written out beforehand.
Yeah, I'm certainly gone through mine as well. I think it's been very interesting and some very good points came up that we didn't know about. I think it was great.
Ted, we're going to hold you to that art book, and Bob, we're going to hold you to that. We're going to hold you to that new guide, the more complete guide.
Yes,
absolutely.
The even more complete guide.
I think, or the extra complete guide, I think would be quite a good thing.
Complete guide 2.0.
I'm loving it.
Yeah, that would work as well. Yeah, 2.0.
I think it was Chad Bornhold again in the chat was asking for it like an almanac, just the 2023 guide to Middle Earth and the 2024 guide to Middle Earth. We'll just keep chugging out new editions for you.
There was a 2003 calendar.
There was a calendar. Who did the calendar?
I forget. It's probably whoever was the publisher at that point. Or whatever was the name of the publishing company at that point, I should say.
Mm-hmm. Was that calendar of like the art from your complete guide, the Hildebrand art at the time?
I haven't looked at it in quite a while.
Well, now we're
we'll
curious.
Have to dig into that for another chat. Yeah, we're really curious. All right, we'll figure that one out. Excellent. I want to say thank you to both our guests, Robert Foster, Ted Nasmith. I want to say thank you to HarperCollins for this new edition. I know it's been in the works for a year. The trade edition's coming out September 1st. The deluxe, which has the slipcase, is coming out end of month of September. I think the 28th, if I'm remembering correctly.
29th.
Yeah, 29th.
29th. So really looking forward to seeing both of those. I'm jealous that Andrew already has his copy of the trade.
Yeah, me too.
Holding it up to the camera once or twice. We'll show some pictures when we publish this video to YouTube. I want to say thank you again to both of you for showing up. Thanks to Andrew and Chad for co-hosting with me as well.
Absolutely,
I think my final thing is I want to say everyone here, I think you should run out and buy this book once it comes out because I think you're all going to like it.
Yes, and thank you for being interested.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
really
Jeremy.
Appreciate you guys joining us for this chat. Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Bob.
Yes.
Thanks, all of the audience.
Thank you.